Welcome. I'm going to cover with you how to do the Alive in the Word Bible study method. You're going to need a notebook for this, for your study. You're going to need a Bible, a pencil, and then the leader of the group is going to send you a breakdown for all the paragraphs and all the chapters for the book that you're studying. For this example, we're going to be going over Psalm 1 so that we can do the study step by step. The study has three primary pages that you're going to use as you do each chapter of the book. The first one that you're going to want to be familiar with is the title page. The second one is the keys. The key page and the title page you'll end up referencing back and forth as you do the first part of the study. So turn to your notebook and at the top write title of the page on the page and then go down one line and you're going to write the date on the left hand side. Move to the center of that line and you're going to write the title of the book that you're studying. In this case, we're going to write Psalms. And then on the right hand side of that same line, you're going to write down the chapter, which is chapter 1. And then you're going to write down the initials of what version of the Bible you're studying from. I'm using an English Standard Version, so I would write ESV. Whatever is the initials for the version you're using, you should put that down so that if you ever reference it, you'll know which version of the Bible you were studying from. The next part that you're going to need is you're actually going to move down by skipping a line and you're going to write chapter title. And you're going to leave that blank for now. You will then move down a line and you're going to write titles. And then if you move towards the center of the page or that line, you're going to want to write verses. Now for Psalm 1, we're going to use the breakdown of verse 1 and 2, then 3 and 4, and then 5 and 6. So in that column under verses, you will write 1-2. And at that point, we are done with our title page setup. You're going to want to turn to your key page, which will be the next one. And at the top, you'll write keys. You'll move down one line and you're going to write the date on that first line on the left-hand side. Put Psalms in the center, the title of the book, and then move to the right-hand side and you're going to put the chapter along with the initials representing the version that you're studying from. On the next line down, starting on the left-hand side, you're going to write the word outline. And underneath outline, you're going to write 1-2 for the first part of Psalms 1 that we're going to look at. On the line that you wrote outline, move over about an inch on the page and you're going to write the word key. And then about an inch or half inch past the word keys, you're going to write words. So on the line under outline, key, and words, you should have written 1-2 for the outline. Under the key, you're going to select from each paragraph what was the key verse in that paragraph. What verse summarizes what that paragraph is talking about. And then under words, you're going to end up selecting the words that you feel are the most important to understand when you are reading through Psalms 1, verses 1 and 2. You can pause the video and give yourself a moment to select the words you feel are the most important. Okay. Now at this point, I've written down words like bless, walks, counsel, ungodly, delight, law of the Lord, meditates. You might have just 2 words, you might have 12 words. However many you wrote down, that is okay. The main thing is that you're really looking at those words and determining, are these important for you to understand what this 2 verses are talking about together, this paragraph. Once you have done that, you're going to flip back to your title page And where you wrote the title and verse, next to, on the same line that you wrote 1-2, you're going to write on the left-hand side a title for that paragraph. So for me, I wrote blessed or cursed counsel. Ideally, you want to keep these titles to 3 words or less. Now, the words the, and, a, an, or those don't count because they're not a word that stands on its own. It doesn't have a meaning by itself. So if you end up slipping in a 4th word using the or and, that's okay. The idea is that you're spending time looking at the chapter and really trying to get what it's saying and then summarize it in 3 words or less that you'll be able to remember when you reference it. Oh, yeah, that's what that paragraph was about. By doing this, you'll be meditating on the word, trying to really understand what it's saying, and building in something to help you remember as the chapter builds what each paragraph is building towards. Now, you're going to turn back to your keys page, and however many lines it took you to write all those words, you're going to skip 1 line, and then on the left-hand side, 1 line down, you're under outline going to write 3-4. At this point, you're going to read verses 3 and 4, write down all the words that are important in those verses that really stand out to you, and then select what verse out of those 2 verses, which one is the most important of the 2 verses. Go ahead and pause the video and choose those words. Okay. Now you're going to go back to your title page and you're going to choose a title for verses 3 and 4. So on the line beneath where you put a title for verses 1 and 2, you're going to write a title, 3 words or less, and then under the verse column, you're going to write 3-4. For mine, I chose planted as a title, just 1 word, planted. That stood out to me as something the 2 verses were talking about. Okay, now we're going to do verses 5 and 6. Go back to your keys page, skip 1 line past your last word you wrote down for verses 3 and 4. And on the left-hand side, you're going to write 5-6. You're going to go across and write out your key words, and remember to select the key verse out of the 2 verses, which one was the most important to understanding those 2 verses. Go ahead and pause the video again and come back when you're done. Okay. For that one, I chose my key verse as 6, and I wrote down words like ungodly or wicked. Wicked is, I believe, the word that's used in the ESV. And I noticed as I went through here, these 2 verses, wicked was used twice. And wicked was also used in verses 3-4, and wicked was also in 1 and 2. So throughout this chapter, the most common word that was said over and over again was the word wicked. So I feel as though, being that repeated, it was an important word. And so when I wrote wicked, I underlined it. That way I could really focus in on the importance of what it's getting. The other thing I noticed is that in verses 5 and 6, the word way was used twice, once to describe the righteous and once to describe the wicked. And so I wrote way and I underlined it. So you'll go back to your title page and you're going to select a chapter or a paragraph title. So go down, write your title on the line beneath where you had the title for 3 and 4. and make sure that you note under the verses that you're doing verses 5 and 6 for this title. For me, I wrote clock is ticking. I feel as though the time is limited and you have to make a decision. Now, at this point, you're going to skip a line and you're going to write keyword on the next line down and select a keyword. For me, I felt Psalm 1, the keyword was way. You may have a different keyword, that's okay. But the keyword is, if you had to summarize the whole chapter, what is this chapter about? In one word from the chapter you read, what word would summarize what the whole chapter is about? That's a very tall task, but it allows you to meditate on the word, really try and dig in and understand, what is this chapter about? What is the core idea? And for me, I chose the word way because it talks about the way of the righteous and the way of the wicked. And I felt like it was a contrast, but the main thing was the way that you go, your walk, your life. And I felt like that was the focus of what way are you going to go in Psalms 1. Now, the next line down, you're going to skip and then you're going to write key verse on the left-hand side and then write out the key verse. Actually, write it out on the page. I chose verse 1:6. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish. And so that was my key verse. I felt like it summarized what the whole chapter was about in one verse. Now, as you're going through, you're going to end up running across verses that are so powerful and so strong. But when you look at them, you're like, it's not really the key verse. It's not what the chapter is about, but it speaks to me so powerfully. You want to document that. You want to write it down. So on the next line, you're going to skip and then you're going to write favorite verse. And I always write out my favorite verse as well. And in this case, it was 1:3. He shall be like a tree planted by the river of water that brings forth its fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. I love that verse, but it's not the key because it's not what the whole book is or the whole chapter is about. But you write that down so that it's documented. Now, as you go through this, you may notice that you want to have a better understanding of what the Bible is saying. Like the word way that I talked about, you might want to look that up in a dictionary. You can also look it up in a concordance and find out what is the original meaning if you want to go that far. You don't have to do that, but it is an option. When I did this study, I actually looked up the word wicked in a dictionary, and then I also went to a concordance and I looked up the word wicked just so that I had a better understanding of what this chapter was talking about. When we come together and share in a group, you're going to end up sharing your titles, your key word, your key verse, and your favorite verse. I find this to be a very enjoyable part of the study. And as you're sharing them, often people will share a little reason why that spoke to them as they were doing their study. And at the end of doing your titles off of the first page, if you had a word study that you did, you can also share that with the group. And I find that that richly blesses a lot of people. And I've been blessed by other people's studies. Now, this is the first 2 pages of the study. I'm also going to make a video about the 3rd page, the thought page, and you will get a chance to look at that. And just a heads up, there is actually a 4th page, the conclusion page, but you don't get to that until you've completed the whole book. And I'll talk about that on a later video. Thank you.